We're going to give people just a minute or two to get connected before we start. Yeah, we're already. Okay, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started. I want to give folks a minute to get connected, but I see that there are some folks watching now, so we'll go ahead and start. Just a little bit of housekeeping. First, my name is Brian Gilfus. I'm the HPC Client Services Manager here at OSC, and my team's responsible for the client experience. I'm going to basically talk a little bit about our new cluster, Owens. I've got a couple of slides. It's still very early in the process, so a lot of stuff's up in the air. I will try to explain as best as we can. There's a Q&A app. It should be over on the side. You guys should be able to type in your questions there. That way we can kind of keep things under control, and I will answer those. You can type them as we go. If it makes sense for me to stop and answer one, I will. Otherwise, I may just wait till the end to work through those. We'll just see how it goes. So let's go ahead and get started here. Let me share my slides. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Owens. Actually, I'm going to first talk a little bit about OSC. Let's see if I can get this to advance now. There we go. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about OSC's impact. I think it's good context to remember a little bit about who we are and what we enable. So in 2015, we served 25 different Ohio universities, 33 companies, almost 1,300 clients, 124 trainees, attended 10 different training opportunities, 451 grant awards were made, 459 different research projects used us, and over 19 different academic courses used our supercomputers to support the teaching that they were doing. All of those people and all of those clients consumed over 161 million core hours, ran over 4 million jobs. We had about 842 terabytes of data on our project's servers last year, and we hit 99.7% uptime. So a lot of work being done here, and a lot of people being helped. We'll probably add information in the near future about degrees that have been granted as a result of the services we provided. So it's nice to see that we're helping so many people at so many different universities in Ohio accomplish their teaching and research goals. So 116 new faculty came online in 2016, or 2015, excuse me. As you can see from around the state, from large universities like OSU to smaller places like Kenyon. So again, that's another indicator of the kind of diversity of folks that our services are helping. The 459 awards were also scattered around the state. You can see the R1s, UC, OSU, and Case Western had a number of awards, but even some of the other universities have done well. A lot of the MAC schools get a good number of awards and do a decent amount of research on our systems as well. And the 19 course awards were also spread around the state. Miami, UD, Cedarville, UC, OSU, Akron, Cleveland State, Bowling Green, and Toledo all had courses that leveraged OSC services last year. And the mix of sciences using us, mathematical and physical sciences, still kind of dominate the academic research on our systems. With engineering kind of in second, we've seen some growth in the biological and social sciences. So it's a broad mix of services and a broad mix of clients. So let's go ahead and get into the main gist of what we've got going on here, and that's actually two things. One is Owens, the new cluster, and simultaneously we're doing a bunch of behind-the-scenes things, which will be visible to clients. Some of it won't be, but some of it will. Specifically, the replacement of all three of our storage services with new upgraded storage, and that's actually ongoing right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those. The first thing to talk about is the storage. Home Project and Scratch are all being replaced with new updated storage. It's faster, it's larger, it's more capable. We should have all three of those online this month in June. I'll talk a little bit more about all three of those in a future slide. Data center facilities, we're actually doing a bunch of data center upgrades to support Owens and the additional power and cooling needs that system has. It's currently, I believe, scheduled for completion in August. That may not be accurate. There's still some flux there, but the process is ongoing. Owens is our first water-cooled system, so we have some plumbing work to do and some reconfiguration of the space. And then, of course, the supercomputer itself. It's actually scheduled for delivery, I believe, early next week. We expect to have it in, and these dates are extremely tentative, so I share them. Please understand that things may change. We're thinking maybe around mid-August for limited production, and full production sometime early in November. That full production is dependent on all of the facilities projects we've mentioned being complete, so that we have enough power and cooling capacity to power up all of the nodes in the cluster. So the storage upgrades, home directories, we're going from 300 terabytes to 900 terabytes. The performance will be about 10 gigabytes per second. It's this new NetApp appliance, and that will be deployed next Tuesday during that downtime. The paths to home directory, we're going to provide some more information on this. The paths to home directories will change. However, we're maintaining symlinks on our current clusters, so hopefully it should be a non-disruptive change for any of our clients. You should just see better performance. Some of the problems we've had with people overloading some of the existing file servers, home directory servers, we hope will go away with the better performance of this system and the additional management tools that we have available to us. So it should be mostly invisible to folks. There will be some changes that will be more visible as a result of this change on Owens and other future clusters. And I'll spell that out in more detail later unless somebody really wants to know now and ask a question related to that. Project storage, we're going from about 1.1 petabytes to 3.4 petabytes. And the aggregate performance is going to go up to about 40 to 50 gigabytes per second. This is just a massive expansion in size and performance for us. It's an IBM Elastic Storage system, and we're going to deploy that on June 28th. So this is actually going to be our lowest cost storage and our best performing, well, except for Global Scratch, right? But our best performing persistent storage, because since that's all backed up to tape, and it will be easier for us to expand that in the future than our current deployment. So This is kind of our long-term solution for high-performance data storage, and that's where we really want to encourage people to store their data, especially if the home directories are not, sufficient for your needs. Global Scratch, we're replacing the Lustre file system with this new IBM Elastic Scratch system. We're going from about 570 terabytes to about 1,000, and again, very high performance, 100 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes per second. We expect this, this system will not be backed up. It will be a Scratch system. Have that rolled out June 20th as well, along with the Scratch system or the project system, so that we can replace both of those existing services at the same time. And this work's actually already been done. We've upgraded our tape library. We've expanded the amount of storage we have and the performance of that storage so that we can manage these larger file systems and manage backing them up in a timely manner so we can continue to provide the same level of service we have with tape backups in the past. So that work was necessary before we could put these new services in place and was completed last month. So clusters. Owens is the new cluster named after Jesse Owens. It's got a theoretical performance of 750 teraflops. I'd like to make a note that performance is only based on the CPU performance, whereas the Ruby and Oakley performances are based on it also includes the GPUs. So the reason that we don't include the GPUs in the theoretical performance for Owens is that we have not purchased those yet, and those will not be available until sometime in the future. There's 824 nodes, so it's a little bit larger in terms of nodes than Oakley, but the number of cores is almost, well, a little over 23,000. So it's much higher than, much higher than the current core counts. There's a much higher core count per node. Obviously, we'll talk about the details of the nodes on the next slide. Total memory goes up, memory per core goes up, and the interconnect it becomes the next generation of interconnect as well. So it's a huge expansion in our total capacity, and core count goes up quite a bit as well. So we should be able to run more jobs than we run today and run larger jobs than we run today and just, put more work through than we can by quite a bit. And Frank, I'm going to come back around to your question a little bit later. So node configurations. There's 3 types of nodes on Owens. There's dense compute, GPU compute, and analytics. The dense compute's the bulk of the nodes. It's 648 of those 800 some nodes. The whole system's a Dell system. So these are Dell PowerEdge servers. They have 2 Intel Xeon E5 2680 V4 Broadwell chips. So these are 14-core chips. So there'll be a total of 28 cores per node in the dense compute nodes. And there'll be 128 gigs of memory on each of those nodes as well. The GPU compute, 160 GPU-ready nodes. So these are Dell PowerEdge R730s. The same Broadwell processor and the same 128 gigs of RAM will just be able to support up to 2 GPUs in each of those nodes as well. And then the analytics nodes, there's 16 Dell PowerEdge R930 nodes. These have a different processor. These have 12-core Haswells, and 4 of them per node. They have basically 1.5 terabytes of RAM, and half of the nodes, so 8 of the 16 nodes, have 24 2-terabyte local drives. I'm not sure yet what the configuration of those drives will be. I have been asked before whether they're SSD or regular drives. They are regular drives, but we'll probably have those in some sort of RAID arrangement for performance purposes. So jobs that have large local disk requirements will have access to those nodes, those resources as well. Actually, I'll back up then, since the next slide doesn't mention this. The GPU compute nodes, I've mentioned those that we're prepared to add GPUs. We do have funds set aside for those. We are waiting for the new NVIDIA GPUs to be available. So I'm not sure the timing of that, whether we'll be able to get into an early ship and get those this year, late this year, or whether we'll have to wait until early next year. There's just there's a lot of things up in the air around that yet. But the current plan is possibly to put 2 GPUs in each of those nodes. We may do less because our current GPUs are not fully leveraged on our existing clusters, but you know, we'll have to make a decision about how to proceed with that. Okay, there's an early user program, and the application window is closed for this now, but I still want to talk about this because there will be some impact for other users as well. So the goal here is we want to move some folks off of Ruby and Oakley onto Owens sometime in early to, well, probably more likely mid-July. The goal here is we want to be able to test hardware and software installs. And we also want to kind of reduce load on our other systems. And that's the thing that'll help folks who aren't in that program, is they should see a lower demand on the other services, and they should be able to get their jobs through a little bit more quickly. And hopefully then we'll have a nice, robust system ready to go when we open it up to the rest of the client base. So just to kind of give you the large picture of what the systems are going to look like, or what the overall compute environment is going to look like. Back in March, we were still running Glen plus Ruby and Oakley. You can kind of see in the node count, well, we'll talk about node count in the upper left first. We turned off a sizable percentage of our total nodes, and we've been without those now for a few months. We'll turn on about the same number, about half of the new cluster, so roughly the same, a little bit less than the same number of nodes we just turned off in August when we make them generally available. Of course, they will actually be on a little bit earlier in July for the early user period. And then once we get all of the power work done, we'll turn the rest of the nodes on kind of maybe in the early November time frame. That'll put us up to, around 1,700 nodes on the whole system. So the node count goes up appreciably. What's more interesting is you start to look at the core count. We double our nodes. We'll increase our total cores by about 2.5 times, right? The number of cores that went away with Glen was much smaller than the number of nodes relative to the overall services that we provided. And you can see then that we're adding, many, many more cores. And then when you look at total performance, the performance of these new systems will be much, much higher than what we currently have on the floor, and of course then dramatically much higher than what we turned off with Glen. Glen becomes a tiny blip back in March, and even our current systems are kind of dwarfed by Owens in terms of total compute, the total flop capability. So more than a 5-time increase in performance by the time November rolls around. But I hope it's clear from this that the addition of the partial power on in August will already dramatically outstrip what we can do today. So the delay until November should not really cause any additional hardship. It should just be, hey, look, there's even more available in the November timeframe. Job scheduling. This is kind of one of the more fuzzy areas for us yet. We're so early in the process, we haven't really explicitly started trying to figure this out yet. However, I think there are some things that are probably pretty likely to happen. Well, we will definitely be using Torque and Moab. We're not going to be switching to a different scheduler like Slurm on this cluster. What we end up settling on will likely look pretty similar to our existing clusters with fairly similar rules regarding serial and parallel jobs and job lengths. Core counts, will probably go up since we tend to base those on percentages of the machine. One thing to note is that on Oakley we allow single core scheduling. On Ruby we require whole node scheduling, and that was a specific choice for that specific cluster. So the new machine Owens will not require whole node scheduling. will we allow 28 individual jobs to run on a node? I don't know. That's a possibility. We may do, maybe a quarter of a node scheduling. We haven't really talked about specifically what that's going to look like, but we think it's unreasonable to ask our users when so many people run serial jobs to have to use 28 cores in a job. So we'll have some level of sub-node scheduling available on Owens. Let's see. So those are my prepared slides. I realize there are a couple of things I forgot to put in now, but I'll go ahead and move on to the questions, and then I'll loop back around to some of those things. So let's see. Got to find my mouse here, and that's confusing. Okay, there we go. All right, so first question from Frank. Will the files currently on Lustre be moved to the new Scratch system? That's a good question. I don't know that we've decided on whether or not we're going to move some or all of that data or not. I think our preference would not to be, since it's temporary data, but I also recognize that some folks are currently using Lustre for, I won't say permanent storage, but for files they intend to keep due to how full our other file systems are. So yeah, we may end up doing that, if that's something of interest. We will have to consider that. I'm making a note here. Okay. So yeah, I guess the short answer is that's to be determined. Frank, if you have particular input, you can email me or OSC help, and we can take that into consideration as we're thinking about what to do with those files. Okay. When will users accepted for the early user program be notified? So that's a good question, Logan. We are currently evaluating that list and trying to figure out, where are the commonalities and software requirements so we can do the installs and kind of be prepared for that. We do have an environment that we're already starting to prepare for Owens, even though the hardware is not here yet. We do have a software environment we're working on. So my hope is that we'll be able to start letting people know within the next week or two. Please don't hold me to that. But hopefully we'll be able to let people know in the next week or two kind of what their status is regarding that. We want to let as many people on early as we can. The bigger question is, what's the software environment going to look like? Are we going to be able to get everything installed or not? So, what's a possibility is we may let people in phases during the early user program, depending on what the software environment looks like, or we may let people on immediately. People who we want to support on the system, there may be some people who we can't support because they want GPUs, for example. So there might be a few people who just, it's not possible to support them in the early user program. Other folks we may let in even if the software environment isn't ready yet, with the understanding that, well, if you have your own codes to compile, if you have some other things to do, you might be able to work on those, but we may not have all of the packages that you requested available. So hopefully we'll let folks know in the near future, in a week or two. And then, certainly if we have to pass on somebody, if we have to tell someone that they're not going to be in, we're definitely going to let them know well in advance of the early user period, so that they're aware of what's going on. I would hate for someone to just not hear one way or the other. So we'll definitely follow up on that. Okay. So, are there any other questions? Do you have any questions? Cool. No. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to bring up? We are reviewing storage policies, but there's no expectation that those are going to change at the time the new storage services come out. And certainly whatever policies we come to will be minimally impacted on current usage of the systems. We want to make sure that we're honoring current commitments and not doing things disruptive to our users. But we are reviewing policies to make sure that we're best utilizing the state subsidy and supporting the broadest number of folks that we can with that. We've talked a little bit about Condo in the past. There are some Condo nodes on Owens already. So we'll hopefully have all that set up as well. Good question. So I'll answer that in a second. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was interactive support. We're planning to do a little bit, this has been challenging on the current system because of how full it is. So we want to do a few things to make interactive use a little bit easier. We've got some updates coming to on-demand, which should be visible before Owens is available, and we may do some additional scheduling things on Owens to make interactive use a little bit easier. So folks who need to do visualization work and have access to larger compute, and then what you can get on a login node, we should be able to support that. So, all right. Another question here. Will the new Owens software environment support older modules? So I guess if the question is, are we pulling forward old software versions? I don't think we're planning on doing a bunch of that. If there are specific needs, we can evaluate that. We're certainly not going to pick up the entire software stack on Oakley and drop that down on Owens. We expect to have a full suite of packages. We may run slightly newer versions, and then if we need to go to an older version of a particular package for a particular reason, we can do that on a case-by-case basis. So I think Frank, the right answer is let us know what your specific needs are, and we can kind of add that to the queue and work on pulling some of those older versions forward. But we don't want to just pull everything forward because that's a lot of extra work. And we want to encourage people to step forward to newer versions of the software wherever it makes sense to do so. Okay. Are there any other questions folks have? Okay. Well, it sounds like that's a no. We're going to have another one of these late in the month. Of course, this one will be archived on YouTube, so you can refer back to it later. Or share it with folks who wanted to see it and weren't able to make it. We're going to have another one of these scheduled. I don't remember the date. I should have written that down before I popped in here. But it's on the Google Plus page for this account, so you can find it there. I believe it's listed on our website as well in upcoming events. And I know it was listed in the email we sent out about this. So we should have much more information by the end of this month on maybe some of the things that were a little bit fuzzier here. So you can certainly come and listen to that as well, or of course just check for it afterward and kind of skim through it when it's done if you'd rather do that. So since I don't see any additional questions, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. As always, if you need any help with anything you're doing on our systems, you can contact OSC Help and we'll work to solve your problems. If you have any additional questions related to Owens, you can ask there or you can email me. So thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys later.